Twins have always been something of a fascination to the public eye. People with identical looks and very similar behaviors. Who could possibly make a better partner in crime than your twin? A horrible mistake made by a police officer, a deadly warning that was foolishly disregarded, and a notorious pair who committed remorseless acts. All this and more on this episode of Seriously Strange. Identical twins Joel and Michael Stovall were known as loners in Florence, Colorado. Loners who liked wearing camouflage, carrying guns, and setting fire to their school. They were taught survival by their Vietnam veteran father, and they loved every minute of their training. But it wouldn't be until September 28, 2001 when their community would find out just how violent the 24-year-old brothers could be. It was 8 p.m. when Deputy Jason Schwartz was dispatched. He and a fellow deputy met up at the Stovall family get-together in Penrose, where they quickly discovered that Joel Stovall, fed up with his neighbor's dog's barking, shot the dog 5 times before throwing its body into the Arkansas River. He was arrested, but not without protests from his family. His twin, Michael, was also soon in handcuffs, and the brothers were put into the back of Schwartz's vehicle and taken away while the other deputy tried to calm the aggravated Stovall family. But a very fatal mistake was made. The brothers were not searched thoroughly before being thrown into the patrol car. Hidden on Michael was a homemade handcuff key of all things, and 2 handguns, a .32 caliber semi-automatic and a 9mm semi-automatic. As Schwartz drove the twins to jail, Michael unlocked his restraints and pulled out a gun. Deputy Schwartz was immediately shot in the back of the head. The patrol car swerved off the road and into a ditch. The Stovall twins climbed out of the vehicle, freed from the handcuffs, and pulled Schwartz from the wreck. The deputy was shot 15 more times, 11 times specifically to the back of his skull. The two then took the shotgun from the patrol car and raced back to their trailer in Florence on foot, where they loaded up on firearms and stole their neighbor's truck at gunpoint. Upon hearing of the deputy's death, the Florence police drove to the Stovall's trailer, where they were immediately under attack. Joel and Michael fired at the 18 law enforcement officers, hitting Florence Police Corporal Toby Bethel. His car crashed into a tree as the brothers continued to fire. Bethel was struck a total of 4 times near his spine, resulting in permanent paralysis. As an ambulance rushed to the scene, the Stovall brothers circled back and watched, laughing and waving at the officers helping Bethel out of his vehicle. Then they set out west, with Joel in the driver's seat and Michael shooting in the back. The pursuit continued, but eventually they ran over a police spike strip, which punctured the tires of the truck, but the Stovall twins unloaded enough ammo to put some distance between them and the police and ditched the pickup. They fled into the mountains, but about 24 hours later, they returned to their stolen truck, where they were apprehended. The two were charged with and pled guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated robbery, and 18 counts of attempted first-degree murder. They are currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, plus 896 years. Two sisters who were destined for the kill. Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah Whitehead, also known as Taz and Jazz, may have been Girl Scouts and honor roll students, but they had quite a complicated relationship with their mother, Nikki Whitehead. Raised by their great-grandmother, Nikki's presence was sporadic at best in the twins' lives, and fights would often break out between the three. These fights, both verbal and physical, landed them in juvenile court many times, but on January 5th, 2010, Nikki finally won back custody of her daughters. Taz and Jazz were less than thrilled. The twins told a counselor that if forced to go back to their mother's home, they would probably end up killing her. It wasn't over a week into living with their mother where they did just that. It was the morning of January 13, 2010 in Conyers, Georgia, when the 16-year-old sisters were getting ready for school. Another argument had erupted in the house, and Nikki, filled with rage, took a pot from the kitchen and threatened her children. Taz wrestled the pot away, and the fight became more violent as Nikki grabbed a kitchen knife instead. The twins began to fear for their lives, and Jas grabbed a vase and smashed it over her mother's head, while Taz hit her with the pot. The three struggled, biting, punching, and screaming at each other. The twins felt that it was either their lives or their mother's. Finally, Taz got hold of the knife and stabbed Nikki. After more fighting, Jas began to strangle her mother with a ribbon medallion, but was struck hard to her head. In a daze, Jas grabbed the knife from her sister and took her turn, stabbing. Nikki was finally too weak to fight, so the two sisters took her into the bathroom, placed her in the bathtub, and filled it with water. As Nikki was bleeding out and trying to keep afloat, she spoke to the twins, repeating over and over, "I hate you, I hate you." A few minutes later, Nikki Whitehead was dead. Instead of phoning 911, the sisters collected their mother's purse and phone and put the pot and kitchen knife in a plastic bag. Then they went to school like it was any other day. The Whitehead sisters finally involved the police when they returned home, and a deputy found Miss Whitehead submerged in the bathtub, noting the smell of blood that filled the entire house. The 16-year-olds claimed that they had no involvement and were treated as victims for 4 months before finally being arrested. The Whitehead sisters were charged with voluntary manslaughter and both pled guilty in early 2014. Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah Whitehead are now serving 30-year sentences in separate prisons. Twin brothers seen as a blight on humanity. Pete Bondurant Jr. and Pat Bondurant were identical twins living in Elkton, Tennessee. More commonly known as the Bondurant Boys, these men weighed over 300 pounds each and used their size to intimidate. For the first 18 years of their lives, the twins were inseparable, but after high school, Pete moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. He spent most of his time drinking there, and in 1975, Pete was convicted of manslaughter after stabbing two friends, one whom died as a result of receiving over 40 stab wounds. While Pete served out his sentence, Pat got a job at a local rubber plant and married a woman named Denise in 1983. Together, they had 2 children and were content in their lives until Pete was released on parole and returned to Tennessee. The twins grew close again, and soon the farmhouse became a place for local youth to party, drink, and use drugs such as Valium and cocaine. In 1986, 23-year-old Gwen Duggar returned to the Bondurant farm to pick up her car that she had left there after a party. Pete had convinced Duggar to stay with the brothers for a bit, giving her drugs until she was barely conscious. After doping Duggar up, both Pete and Pat took her to the bathroom and raped her one at a time. Denise Bondurant found the woman later and tried to send the girl away when Pat came upon them and beat the young woman with an axe handle. Pete then finished her off with 2 shots from a .22 caliber pistol, claiming to put her out of her misery. The brothers burned Gwen Duggar's body in a 55-gallon drum and dumped the remains in a creek near the farmhouse. During an investigation, a collection of human bone fragments were discovered on the Bondurant property, leading the police to launch a series of investigations. It was discovered that in 1986, Pat had beaten his co-worker Ronnie Gaines to death. Pete helped his twin dismember and burn Gaines' body. His charred bones were buried in the twins' front yard. In yet another case, Pete Bondurant was convicted in the brutal murder of his girlfriend, Terry Lynn Clark. With the help of his ex-wife's testimony, Pat and his brother Pete are now serving their sentences at Riverbend Maximum Security Prison in Tennessee. That's all for this episode. Remember, you may not believe it, but anything is possible in a world so seriously strange. Be sure to press subscribe to my channel now, because you won't want to miss the next episode. Also, be sure to check out my last video on the infamous serial killer Andre Chikatilo. You can either click on screen now or head to the description below, and there's a link down there for you. And I will see you next Wednesday.